Great news! There's a quick way you can save money. Switch to Geico. Geico could help you get great coverage at a great price, and it only takes 15 minutes to see if you could save 15% or more on car insurance. Go to geico.com today and see how much you could save.
The Fantasy Focus Football Podcast is presented by ZipRecruiter. Forgetting to start the hottest quarterback in the league, Josh Allen? Not smart. Using ZipRecruiter to find qualified candidates fast? That's smart. ZipRecruiter identifies people with the right skills, education, and experience for your job, then actively invites them to apply. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/06010. ZipRecruiter.com/06010.
Fantasy, you're in the 06010.
Welcome into the Friday edition of the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast. What I should have said is aloha to the Friday edition, because it's Aloha Friday.
It's Aloha Friday. Look
That's
at you.
Right, yes.
Do you and Chapin have some sort of nautical plans this weekend?
No, we're going to her holiday party tonight.
I mean, when you started off with not, I was a little nervous.
Oh, sure. Fair. Fair. But now that we're live on Twitter, I have to clean it all up.
Right. So actually, the backstory is my dad, for those, I think many of the people in this podcast audience know, my dad's from Hawaii.
Yes.
Right.
And one of the great parts
We're
of
in Hawaii. I don't actually
know. He's from Honolulu. Born and raised in Honolulu. Started high school at Punahou, which is where Barack Obama went as well. And then he finished high school in D.C., went to boarding school, and at that point he became a stateside man. He's now lived in Boston for the entirety of his adult life after going to Haverford College in Philadelphia. But grew up in Hawaii and still has deep roots, and certainly, like, born there, you have a special bond with your people. His favorite football player is Marcus Mariota. Like, his favorite athletes have always been players that hail from Hawaii. And Rain
listens
Spooner,
to nothing but Don Ho music.
Yes, he plays the ukulele.
Sure,
like,
of course, got it.
Right?
Understood.
Boy for
Tiny
breakfast.
bubbles.
Yep, got it.
I'm impressed that you actually knew that.
But
Man.
Rain Spooner is, like, every year my dad, like, growing up, every year my dad for Christmas would always get me a Rain Spooner Hawaiian shirt.
Sure.
So it's Christmas season, and 'tis the time of the year to buy it. And so Rain Spooner 2018 edition here. So
Yeah, there you are.
Hawaiian
There you go.
shirt. So Aloha Friday all the way through.
Shout out to Papa Yates.
Papa Yates, Bill Yates. So just a simple, humble man who loves his Aloha Friday. So
You know who else is a simple, humble man?
You,
Derek Henry.
How about
Derek
that?
Henry. Shout out to all you guys that managed to start Derek Henry, or all the first place teams that played the crappy team that just snuck into the playoffs that was like 6-7 and got in like on some sort of like tiebreaker and is all beat up and just had to throw in Derek Henry because they had no one else. And you're waking up this morning going like, I crushed all season long, and then this, like, what? That happened.
Yeah, so here's
That's
the
a
thing.
league. It didn't happen to me, but
Yeah.
I have a buddy that happened to that has a first place team crushed all year long and is going to lose.
I can't tell you how many people tweeted to me last night. They were like, Matthew must be playing against Derrick Henry tonight. That's the only explanation for 4 touchdowns.
I managed to avoid Derrick Henry, thankfully, in all my playoff leagues. But you know who did not? Yeah. Do you know who? No, in all seriousness, do you know who did not avoid? Scott Clark.
How about
our
that?
friend Scott Clark at All Biz.
So do we have to redefine what it means to get Scott Clark? Like, because I think
Scott Clark got Scott Clark. Our boss here, Seth Markman at Tuna's Weasel on the Twitter, started Derrick Henry
of the league,
of the War Room League.
Yeah,
started him against Scott Clark in the playoffs.
Something? Like, the next time Seth comes down for performance review, he'd be like, Field, here are all the things you need to do better. Just let me set your lineup instead.
Right.
Because he apparently is the GOAT when it comes to fantasy football.
Game preview.
All right, a lot of games to get to. We've got 15 in total, of course.
But
no
before we do that, really quickly, just because I want to say this, we did hear back yesterday about the ZipRecruiter Smartest Fan of the Week. We left that open. I just want to solve that right now. Andrew Baldock, who was our former Marine, we put him up for ZipRecruiter Smartest Fan of the Week if he wanted it. He said he would take a man's league entry instead of ZipRecruiter Smartest Fan of the Week. So Joshua Buck will be this week's ZipRecruiter Smartest Fan of the Week, and Andrew Baldock will be in the man's league in 2019.
Okay.
The Cliff Notes version, Matthew, is we had 2 awesome entries. One which was hilarious and funny, and one which was about how someone would take you to war with him because you would be a great outlet for those that are in war. And basically every platoon has a guy that brings intentional and unintentional comedy, and it was like it
was actually,
most of my comedy is intentional, in fairness, but I appreciate that.
It was very touching, and somebody, I mean, just leave it.
You
at
guys,
that.
listen.
We
you guys
decided
know, you guys know I am very,
worthy.
very supportive of our armed forces and the men and women who serve and the families that support them. So I am on board with any of that.
Welcome. Can I hear what was his name? Josh was his name?
Josh Buck is going to be the ZipRecruiter Smartest Fan of the Week, but Andrew Baldock, welcome to the Man's League.
Put it on the board.
I'm really impressed that Daniel actually had to put it on the board waiting for you just because... Well, I guess we still do board bets.
That's not what he is. Yeah. So lots to get to. Obviously, we will recap the Jaguars and Titans Derrick Henry epic performance on Monday when we crap like the Jaguars
when we all over defense. The Jags.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. When we recap all of Week 14's action, and then of course we've got like a 20-minute breakdown of the Avengers 4 trailer coming up at the end of the show.
NBD,
right?
That's right. Eagles and Cowboys is our first
Avengers
game.
4 trailer is here. So excited.
First game is Eagles and Cowboys. Amongst the starters for the Eagles is Zach Ertz. He has been the best tight end, or at least in the conversation, along with Travis Kelce all season. Josh Adams, Stefania, is going to play, but he's now dealing with another injury issue. It's not the one that popped up last week.
Right. Last week it was a hip issue, and it came up on Saturday. We were nervous about a Monday night game. Obviously, he ended up playing. He was fine, but he comes out, and this week he's on the injury report because of his shoulder. So you might have been nervous if you saw him limited on Wednesday with something new, but full practice yesterday and on track to play.
Good news there. So, Matthew, the question becomes this. This Cowboys defense last week took the Saints to the mat, held them to 10 points. People are saying, can I play anybody against the Cowboys? So, who moves out of your lineup this week? Does Josh Adams crack lineups? Does Golden Tate crack lineups after a great week? How about Alshon Jeffrey? In some sort of quick version of each of those players and what it means against the Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm not confident about any of these teams, and so I guess it's all sort of check the ranks and depend who you have. But I don't have any of them ranked as a starter. So I have Carson Wentz outside my top 15 this week, traveling to Dallas on a short week. Remember, Cowboys only team in the NFL yet to allow a 3-touchdown pass this game. They have the third best red zone defense. They've allowed the third fewest touchdown passes this season. Carson Wentz has not looked great the last 3 weeks. He played better against my Redskins, but whatever. Everyone plays better against my Redskins.
Reset, though. We were like, oh yeah, Carson Wentz played well last night, but it was like, oh yeah, because he has played really poorly of late.
Yeah, he has. And so remember, Cowboys played last Thursday. So they've had 10 days to prepare for this matchup. Yep. They are at home. Again, Eagles traveling on a short week here. So I have Wentz outside my top 15. Remember, these are two teams that are among the slowest pace of play in the NFL. So again, it's unlikely that one team, listen, Derrick Henry just had the biggest fantasy day, so anything can happen.
Sure.
We're in that world where Derrick Henry has the biggest fantasy day of any player at any position in the NFL this season. But in terms of what's most likely to happen, I think Carson Wentz does not have a huge game. Remember, his projection is under 16 points, and I actually took the under. He made the hate list here. As for Josh Adams, real quickly, they're same thing. Hasn't been used in the passing game. I think he has just one target the past 2 games. All right. And so, Cowboys are a top 5 defense this year in terms of rushing yards allowed and yards per carry allowed. And so Adams, who isn't involved in the pass game, you've got Darren Sproles taking some touches as well. He's outside my top 25. And then in terms of Golden Tate and Alshon Jeffrey, I have Tate slightly higher than Jeffrey. Jeffrey's devolved into a touchdown-dependent guy who doesn't score touchdowns. I mean, no more than 5 targets each of the last 3 games, under 50 yards in every game since Golden Tate joined the team. Since Golden Tate joined the team, his target percentage field is 14.8%. I mean, so Stefania, I'll turn this over to you as well. Like, I mean, with Golden Tate, I know he got into the end zone last week, right? But Dallas is pretty good against the slot.
They are, but I feel like this is what last week we saw what we've been looking for. Remember this whole Golden Tate struggling to learn the offense? Was there any? We were wondering if there was going to be a rapport there. I felt like we started to see that develop with him and Carson Wentz. And Carson Wentz, who's been looking better of late, I feel like if he's got a consistent target that he's comfortable with, and look, Golden Tate's no stranger to being covered either.
Sure,
I mean,
I
think, when he was with Detroit, you always knew that he was going to be a volume target.
I believe, this is just off the top of my head, but I believe Golden Tate had a very nice game against the Cowboys earlier this year, had a huge game against them earlier this year when he was a member of the Lions. So to your point, Stefania, I will say that so far this year, Cowboys generally have been pretty good against slot receivers. They're top 10 in terms of touchdowns allowed, fewest touchdowns allowed to slot receivers. But I guess if I'm starting an Eagles wide receiver, it's Golden Tate, because just Jeffrey's not getting the targets and he's not getting the end zone. I mean, that's what you're hoping with Alshon Jeffrey, is that he managed to get into the end zone here. I feel like Zach Ertz is the only pass catcher you can truly trust here. So we will see. But all of us have Golden Tate as a wide receiver 3 this week. Stefania and Field are a little higher than I am.
For the Cowboys, of course, Ezekiel Elliott will be started this weekend, as will Amari Cooper. Matthew, you have some optimism, though, for Dak Prescott, because this Philadelphia secondary leaves so much to be desired They couldn't expose it last weekend with the Redskins dealing with all those quarterback injuries, but Dak Prescott, not the world's most refined passer, but still good enough to potentially pile up some yards.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a matter of just how good Dak Prescott has been fantasy-wise, and it's also his legs, right? He's got a rushing touchdown in 5 of his last 7 games, including in Week 10 when he played the Eagles earlier this year, and so the rushing has really helped, and part of that's because of Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper has really opened up the field for this Cowboys offense, right? I mean, he has really stretched the field. We're seeing Michael Gallup start to come into his own as well, and so obviously play action is working really well for them with Ezekiel Elliott. It's the whole point of having a guy like Ezekiel Elliott, or one of the big points, obviously. And so to your point about the Eagles secondary, so beat up and struggling again, they are traveling on a short week. Yeah, I have Dak Prescott. I am at 11 this week.
Interesting player this weekend. Would like to see him actually find a rhythm throwing the football, but if he can, it's going to happen against the Eagles.
It's definitely not pretty.
4.5-point favorites are the Cowboys in this game. Of course, they previously won in Philly. I think the Cowboys do it again. Give me the Cowboys. Daniel, how about you?
I am taking the Cowboys.
All right, Matthew.
It's 4.5.
Yep.
I'm getting to my pigskin pick'em. This is what I did. Oh, by the way, well, you go ahead. Yeah, you do that.
I'll take the Cowboys.
And Matthew, what you were going to say is that Golden Tate had 8 for 132 and 2 touchdowns the last time they played the Cowboys. He was, of course, a Lion at that time. What do you got?
Yeah. So nice job, Thirsty Kyle, pulling that up here. How about them Cowboys?
How about them Cowboys, says Matthew. The Minnesota Vikings travel to Seattle to play the Seahawks right here on ESPN.
Do.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I was asking Keith a question about something that came up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The dulcet tones of Keith Lipscomb preoccupied Daniel for a moment, but the Seahawks host
Stop
the Vikings.
talking to Daniel. He can't He can't push a button, Keith, unless he has total focus, until laser focus. That's what he needs. He needs to be able to. You can't just push a button like this. He's got to be like, okay, up. They mentioned Monday Night Football, which was in the rundown, and he knew exactly that was the game that was coming. All right, where is the button? Here is the button. I've done it. Now I can resume talking.
Vikings and Seahawks in Seattle. Critical NFC game in the playoff picture. For the Vikings, you are starting 3 familiar faces. Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. Also Dalvin Cook, who had 8 catches this past week. We feel like Kirk Cousins may have met his match recently in fantasy football, as he has not been productive as a starting quarterback. He's at 15 for both Matthew and I this week amongst quarterbacks. Stephania only slightly more optimistic at 13. And the Seahawks, despite the unfamiliar faces, have been pretty good against opposing quarterbacks this year in fantasy.
Yeah, they really have. They only 4th highest interception rate this season. I mean, Cousins been known to throw a pick or two in his time, and they're the other thing here is that the Seahawks are a top 10 red zone defense. Cousins has struggled so far this year in the red zone, and candidly throughout his career. Somebody who watched a lot of them with the Redskins. Vikings actually a bottom 10 red zone offense this year. Again, Seahawks top 10 in red zone defense. So you figure it's got to come from the long ball here. He's throwing some interception. The weird thing on Kirk Cousins is up until this year, he always had a ton of fantasy value with his legs. You know, he'd always have like 4 or 5 touchdowns, and a lot of those were bootlegs. He's one of those guys that's more athletic, a better runner than I think he probably gets credit for. And this year, like, he doesn't have more than 5 rushing yards in 5 of the last 6 games. That's just not a part of the offense. They're not calling designed runs for him. He's not a big scrambler. He was a guy that needed to do some RPOs or something like that, and that's what he did as part of Jay Gruden's offense. He's not doing it this year for Minnesota. And also, just sort of an anecdotal thing, feels like to me, Field and Stefania, that the Vikings are a team that's sort of trending down. Obviously, that was a bad loss on the road at New England last week. Seahawks feel like a team that is really rising. This is a Monday night game in Seattle. The crowd's going to be into it. I think the Seahawks get up for this one in a big way. The projection for Kirk Cousins is 17.8. I'm taking the under.
All I'm going to say about Kyle Rudolph, who's 14th in Matthew's ranked, 10th in mine, and Stefania in 8th. So we're kind of all over the map. I understand if you're starting him. I also understand if you're not starting him. Fantasy football can tend to drive people up a wall, right? Especially in the playoffs when you make the wrong call and it could cost you a playoff game. However, perspective is always a good thing to keep in life. If you have 7.5 minutes today, find the Vikings Twitter account. Watch the nomination for Kyle Rudolph as the Walter Payton Man of the Year. One of 32 nominees. They are all deserving. I would suggest you watch the Kyle Rudolph video and probably many others as well. Take some time, appreciate the person that he is. For the Seahawks, to spin things back to fantasy football, the injury of note here, Stefania, is Chris Carson, who, now that it's Friday, they'll have their second practice of the week that they have to designate an injury report. He was limited, though, on Thursday because of that hand issue.
Yeah, he dislocated a finger in last week's. It was late in the game, so he never came back in. Pete Carroll seemed to think he was going to be fine. Chris Carson did as well. So I think the fact that he was doing anything on Thursday, which is the first night of practice or the first day of practice heading into a Monday night game, is encouraging. So I would anticipate that Chris Carson is going to be ready to go by Monday night. I would also mention Doug Baldwin while we're here, just because he's been on the injury report before, listed with a hip issue. He's had a groin injury in the past. Didn't practice on Thursday, but again, reminder, this is just the first practice of the week.
Matthew, for as bad as this Vikings offense has been this year, the defense has found its form of late. They weren't amazing against the Patriots last week, but steady performances them in terms of points allowed. They've, 24, 17, 25, 9. Like it's been a pretty good 4-game stretch for Minnesota. And what it means for fantasy football purposes is that you might be sitting players like Russell Wilson or Chris Carson. Does anybody make your list as a must start for Seattle this week?
A must start? No.
Yeah, and I get it. I don't have one. I have Will finish as a legitimate option, but it's hard to go into this game with a ton of confidence.
I have Wilson as a high end QB too, but certainly I don't have him in must start territory. And you're nervous a little bit about Tyler Lockett and Doug Baldwin, as you heard just Stefania talk about there. And then you think about Chris Carson, who's not involved in the passing game, and does that finger bother him? Looks like he's going to be able to go, but he's not involved in the passing game, right? So he really needs that kind of volume. Vikings are such a good defense. I mean, Carson made the hate list this week. I'm taking the under on his projection of 13 points here. Remember, since week 5, no defense is allowing fewer yards per carry than the Minnesota Vikings. So, and I think you'll see some Rashad Penny and maybe Mike Davis in this one. So, Carson's just outside my top 20.
In my weekly Insider Roundtable fantasy flop of the week, we have to pick one each week.
Sure.
Mine was Tyler Lockett, only because he's breaking models right now.
Yeah.
I think that Mike Clay is going to have some sort of
aneurysm,
conniption.
Breakdown.
Some sort of breakdown over Tyler Lockett. And honestly, Russell Wilson too. The difference between Wilson and Lockett is that because Wilson touches the football in every play, he's got a better chance of continuing to break the model. Like Tyler Lockett is the player that has 2.5 catches a week.
And one of them feels
like one of them goes for a touchdown.
Yep. They are running what I would consider to be an completely efficient offense, which is efficient in football purposes, but not helpful for fantasy.
Agreed on that.
He's averaging under 5 targets a game. He's probably going to see a decent amount of Xavier Rhodes. Lockett plays some inside, some outside, but my expectation is when he plays outside and Baldwin's in the slot, he'll get Xavier Rhodes here. Vikings top 7 defense in terms of deep completions, yards per deep completion, deep touchdowns allowed since week 6. So it's been hard to get on them deep, which has been a big part, obviously, of Tyler Lockett's game.
Lockett and the Seahawks are 3.5-point favorites. I will take Seattle. They have just been rolling of late. I heard a great stat from Bill Simmons on his podcast today that this is crazy. For I think the 6th straight year, the Seahawks won at least 7 games between weeks 3 and week 12. That's ridiculous to win 7 out of 10 weeks when you probably have a bye in most weeks in that stretch. That is crazy.
They always do start slow.
They're the ultimate slow starting team.
Yeah.
Dan,
they figure it out.
I am going to take, all right, I'm going to take the Seahawks.
Starfania?
Yeah, Seahawks at home.
And Matthew?
Seahawk up.
There we go. That kind of works. Hawk up, I think is what you
Hawk up.
Yep, Hawk up. Packers host the Falcons. First game without Mike McCarthy as the head coach. Classy gesture by the Packers to allow him to speak to both his coaches and his team on Tuesday and Wednesday after being fired.
That was important.
That was important, and it was the right thing to do, which is what the Packers tend to do in general.
And I thought Aaron Rodgers and a lot of the players, when asked about their reaction, I thought were very thoughtful and
completely agree. Yep,
and we're great.
But speaking of players in this game, Matt Ryan is definitely a startable player. But Matthew,
do you think in that moment, Aaron Jones just sort of looked at Mike McCarthy and was just like, "Dude, do you think that happened?"
You know something? Well, I understand what you're saying. I think he probably took the high road and was like,
I'm sure they all did. Listen,
yeah.
Mike McCarthy's going to coach again. He's a good football coach. He's absolutely he's a Super Bowl winning football coach, and he's made the playoffs a ton, obviously. Just for whatever reason had a blind spot to Aaron Jones.
But the sneeze was not going to happen, apparently. Anyways, Matt Ryan would normally be a starter, as would Austin Hooper. But let me get to Matt Ryan in a second because we have some disagreement there. But Stefania, before we get there, Julio Jones, he is not practicing yet.
Nope.
But
But he's Julio Jones, and Julio Jones has a knack for not practicing. Then he comes out on Friday, does enough to prove that he can go. The Falcons, again, we talk about the idiosyncrasies of each team. Dan Quinn wants to see that a player can go on Friday and show them that they can be explosive and do what they would need to do in a game situation. And if they can demonstrate that, then they are cleared to go. And again, the Falcons are usually pretty transparent. Like, you know what's happening on Friday. I would be surprised if we don't know by today. And Julio seemed to be very confident about his ability to go. So
yeah, he said he's playing, and there's no concerns there.
If Julio Jones is active, you're starting Julio Jones here. I'm a little nervous about Matt Ryan on this game.
You've got him at 16. Does that mean he's definitely got to be on the hate list along those lines then, right?
I don't think I put him on the hate list specifically, but I certainly had him.
His style. The way he dresses, so you kept him off the hate list.
But certainly, I mean, at some point you just have to sort of cut down guys, and you can't, it was 6,000 words already this week. But, I mean, I'm nervous about Matt Ryan here since week 5, Field. Matt Ryan's QB 13.
Yeah.
Right? He's averaging 19 points a game. He's down 30% from where he was through the first 4 weeks of the season, which was when he was the second best quarterback in fantasy. Past 8 road games. He's averaging just 17 fantasy points a game. Like, he is somebody that seems to have, he traditionally throughout his career, and certainly recently as well, has struggled when he is outside, when he's not playing in a dome. When he's on the road and he's not playing in a dome here. And so, is there a little bit of a bump here with no Mike McCarthy? I understand that doesn't affect the defense. Like, he was an offensive coach and the scheme remains the same, but I don't know. Just, this feels like if ever there was a game for the Packers to sort of rally, it sort of feels like this one. And I don't know, this one, you may not have a better option, but he makes me nervous this week.
I'm in on the idea of the Packers rallying, but I'm more in on the idea of the Packers rallying offensively. And
sure, of
Aaron
course.
Rodgers digs himself out of whatever sort of malaise he has been in for basically the entirety of this season. I'm more confident in Matt Ryan despite the 4-game losing streak and despite the fact that for the first time ever, Matt Ryan and the Falcons have been held under 20 points in 4 straight games. So let's keep an eye on how they bounce back.
The offense does seem a little broken.
Yeah.
In Atlanta.
But I'm less concerned about that one than I am what I've seen from Green Bay, because like Atlanta has a larger sample size of being better this year offensively than the Packers. So let's get to the Packers. We think we're starting Aaron Rodgers, right? Like, do we feel as though Aaron Rodgers has been, we had this top 10 rest of the season conversation for Aaron Rodgers last week, and on Sunday I was like, man, like, I almost feel like we could have it again. Like, are you convinced he's going to get out of this funk? And could it happen as soon as this Sunday? The matchup is perfect. It's a great matchup.
So he has a knack for putting in a performance when he's put himself on the line, or made a statement. And I think I just feel like that's coming this week because
I agree with you, Stefania. I mean, he made my love list, right? It's to Field's point, the matchup is fantastic. Falcons ranked dead last in pressure percentage. I mean, so Aaron Rodgers is going to have time. And when you give Aaron Rodgers time, that is not a good place to be. Falcons allow the 7th most touchdown passes per game. The over-under in this game is 48.5 points, right? So when at least 45 points are scored this year, Rodgers is averaging over 23 fantasy points a game in home games where at least 45 points are scored. So if you believe in what Vegas is saying here, so we expect a greater percentage of plays, and to your point, Stefania, as well, Joe Philbin. I mean, so it's not just Mike McCarthy being fired, but it is the elevation of Joe Philbin, who people forget before he left the Packers and became the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, and he sort of bounced around a little bit since then, back with the Packers now. But in 2011, that was the last year he was with the Packers. That is Aaron Rodgers' best statistical season in his career. 45 touchdown passes, over 4,600 yards. So now, there's a familiarity with...
However, Joe Philbin wasn't calling plays.
Yeah, I know.
Joe Philbin last called plays in 1996. Bonus. If anybody can guess where it was, I don't know what I'm getting you, but I'm getting you something. Daniel, what do you got?
Joe Philbin, Northwestern.
No, but weirdly close.
Yeah,
Stefania?
no, I mean, I actually saw this, so okay. I'm just trying to remember it, but it was like, it was.
I'll say this,
Northwestern State?
Dangerously close.
Yeah, no.
Northeastern. Yeah,
I knew I'd seen it.
Northeastern Husky football program, which I believe disbanded a few years ago. Of course, Kyle knows. Yeah.
No, I agree. He didn't call plays. Right. And so all of this is sort of anecdotal.
Yeah.
I think it's a little comfortable. I don't know how much, candidly, how much play calling you need to call for Aaron Rodgers. Like, I mean, honestly.
We can't say there was an issue with Mike McCarthy and then say, I don't know how much play calling you need to do, right? Like, there has to be somewhere in the middle where those two things are actually, like, we weave them together. I just think that, if nothing else, I think that it was clear there was friction between Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy, and maybe just
for whatever
having
reason,
the burden of that being lifted might allow Aaron Rodgers to have a moment of clarity, want to prove some people wrong this week, and hey, let's get our act together for the last quarter of the season and try not to go into a long winter with like a 4-11-1 record, because that would just be embarrassing.
No, and I agree, and that's sort of where I was getting to, and I think you, not surprisingly, were more succinct and pointed in the comment. But the idea of I think there is a comfort level with Joe Philbin there, and despite all the things, there was clearly tension there, and the fact that tension is gone, I think relaxes Aaron Rodgers here. You asked me at the top of this, am I convinced? Convinced is not the right word, I would say. There is certainly hopeful, cautiously optimistic. Listen, he made the love list, so I'm taking the over on his production of 20.9, his projection of 20 points in this one, but I am at 9, so he's borderline, right? He's a borderline QB1 for me this week.
All right, the Packers are 5.5 point favorites. I'm picking them, but I don't feel great about it. How about you?
Wow, 5.5 points. Yeah, I'll take the Packers.
Vanya?
I'm going to take the Falcons to cover.
Daniel?
I am going to take the Packers.
All right, Matthew, tell us about ZipRecruiter.
No, don't tell us about ZipRecruiter.
I'm not telling you about ZipRecruiter. I want to tell you about SeatGeek.
Don't tell us about ZipRecruiter. Tell us about SeatGeek.
I mean, we love ZipRecruiter, make no mistake, but I'm telling you about SeatGeek because we love them as well.
All right. Love for everybody.
The fact is, and people know this, everyone knows this, everyone understands, getting tickets online can be far too complicated. You see somebody over like Secret Squirrel with his simple-mindedness and his big wide eyes. He can barely push a button while Keith is talking to him, right? He doesn't know what to do. Luckily, there's something like SeatGeek, because there's hundreds of sites, varying levels of reliability, hard to know who to trust. Look at those wide eyes. He didn't know who to trust. He didn't know how to buy tickets. Well, I'm going to tell you, Secret Squirrel, here's how you do it. You go to SeatGeek. They're the way to go, right? SeatGeek pulls in millions of tickets into one place, so you can easily find the seats you want for a price you're willing to pay. Yep, there you go, Secret Squirrel. Look at you, figuring it out all on your own. Nothing quite like being there in person. SeatGeek's going to get you close to the action for a great value. Here's what they do. They're designed to make your ticket buying experience easier than ever by searching multiple ticket sites, grading every ticket based on value. SeatGeek helps you immediately identify the best seats that fit your budget. Not everyone has the same budget, Field Gates. Not everyone can just buy a Hawaiian shirt at the drop of a hat. Some people have to watch their money. So what happens here, every purchase fully guaranteed, so you can shop on SeatGeek with confidence. Make SeatGeek your go-to ticket source for everything from sports to concerts to comedy and theater. We've talked about this, right? I have the SeatGeek app on my phone. It is definitely an easy way to shop for tickets. As we talked about, right? That's how I was able to get my kid to the LSU Georgia game. Best of all, here's the best part, Secret Squirrel. Write this down because I don't want you to forget this. You got a pen? You got a paper? All right, good. You're going to write it down? You ready for me? You ready? Good. Okay. Our listeners, and that includes you because you occasionally listen to the podcast, our listeners get $10 off their first SeatGeek purchase. So here's what you're going to do, Secret Squirrel. You're going to download the SeatGeek app, right? So download the SeatGeek app. Then you enter the promo code FFF. You got that? What promo code is it?
It's FFF, Matthew.
That's right. Promo code FFF for $10 off your first SeatGeek purchase. SeatGeek. Life's an event. We have the tickets.
There you have it. Let's keep things rolling with the Browns hosting the Panthers. The Browns are, but underdogs. We'll get to that in just a moment here. But let's begin with the starts. Normally, I'd tell you Cam Newton is a start and I don't feel bad about it. But Stefania, he's banged up right now.
Yeah, there was a lot of chatter this week, and I think, yeah, exactly.
Is that the chatter?
You with the sound effects of chatter. We need to get that at one point. But I think Cam stoked the fire a little bit because I believe his quote was, "I can neither confirm nor deny whether he would require an off-season procedure on his shoulder." This is his throwing shoulder, the one he had rotator cuff surgery on a couple of years ago, and he's done actually remarkably well since he had that procedure. Look, as far as I'm aware, he does not require a surgical procedure on his shoulder. If he did, he probably wouldn't be able to throw as well as he is right now. He, however, if you've watched him play any time in his career, takes a lot of hits, is not afraid to throw himself into the mix. We've been happy about his running again, but he's paying a bit of a price for it. And some of that is just from landing on his shoulder. Some of it when he's trying to make a first down, he stretches his arm out and lands awkwardly. These are all things that end up aggravating his throwing shoulder. So yes, banged up enough that they had to reel him back in from practice. And even Ron Rivera was talking like he wasn't sure about Cam's status, and that we never hear from him. But I will tell you that Cam Newton is going to play this week, and I think he will be fine. They just need him to, not be reckless. How do you tell a guy, go ahead and run, be Cam Newton, but just don't get crazy because we actually need you to stay on the field?
This reminds me of the time we told Cam said, you can't let
the lion has to roar.
Lion has to roar. Yeah. Look,
Panther has to roar too, but,
to be clear, my bosses at ESPN have told me not to be reckless for 10 years, and that has yet to work on any one day.
And Cam.
So if Cam Newton is active, you're starting Cam Newton. Don't get cute.
And same thing with Christian McCaffrey, of course, has been unbelievable. Has 5 straight games with at least 50 rushing yards and 50 receiving yards. First player to ever do that in NFL history. However, that's where it's obvious. Where is it not obvious?
My little CMC.
Amongst the wide receivers. I think we feel best about DJ Moore. But if you had to choose between Devin Funchess and Curtis Samuel, who was a popular waiver wire ad this week, do either one of you feel confident in playing Funchess over Samuel or Samuel over Funchess, or would you rather play neither of them?
Neither.
I think I'd rather play neither, but if you're asking me to choose between the two, listen, which ESPN does when they make me rank players, they do. They make me rank players. Oh, yeah, they make all of us rank players. Yeah. So I have Devin Funchess over Curtis Samuel here. I guess, look, Devin Funchess. We
all do.
Yeah, I mean, scored the touchdown last week. He was somebody that was leading the team in targets before he got injured, and I get the emergence of DJ Moore, but his target share when Greg Olsen was out earlier this year increased significantly. Big guy, obviously, in terms of red zone targets. So you're asking me, who's more likely to get into the end zone this week, Devin Funchess or Curtis Samuel? I'm going to say Devin Funchess, who I think will increase his snap count. Stefania feels like he's healthier now. I know he was on a limited snap count last week, but feels like all systems go for Funchess.
Yeah, I don't think the back injury is holding him back anymore. I think the inconsistency might be.
Yeah, the inconsistency. This is a player who, by the way, I've said it about 12 times in the podcast, might as well make it a Baker's dozen. It's either playing the Browns, Daniel, Baker's dozen. He needs to get right over the next quarter of the season because he needs to make himself some money in free agency.
Right. He needs to make himself appealing to those who might
That's right.
All that said, Curtis Samuel has 20 targets in his last 3 games, right? And 4 touchdowns in the last 5. So it would not shock me if Curtis Samuel has the
bigger play. Yeah.
So anyway, it
comes down to what you need, right?
What you need and how lucky do you feel? The players on the Panthers that I'm confident in are Cam Newton, Christian McCaffrey, and DJ Moore.
Nick Chubb for the Browns is a must-start, but beyond that, we feel good about Jarvis Landry repeating what we saw last week when he had over 100 yards against the Texans. I don't care if most of it came in the fourth quarter. Those fantasy points still count. The Jaguars had they had no points in the fourth quarter last night. Yeah. Wait, my bad. Anyways, Jarvis Landry, how you feeling about him?
I have him as a top 20 play this week, Field. Look, I like Baker Mayfield in this one. I have Baker Mayfield as a top 13 play, and I think Jarvis Landry is going to be a part of that, right? 10 different times this year, a wide receiver has gone over 80 receiving yards against the Carolina Panthers. They're dead last in the NFL in terms of most fantasy points allowed to wide receivers over the last 4 weeks. So, for me, Jarvis Landry seemed to sort of snap out of it last week and, reestablish a connection here with Baker Mayfield in a game in which I expect Carolina to be able to score on the Browns. Baker Mayfield's going to have to throw, and the Carolina secondary has been very burnable so far this year. So, yeah, I have Jarvis Landry as a start this week.
Panthers are 1.5-point favorites on the road, where they're 1-5 this year.
Before we get to the Pigskin Pick'em real quickly, by the way, because I know he's been all up and down all over the place, but give me David Njoku. I mean, the Panthers, by the way, they struggle in a big way against opposing tight ends. So I'm in on Njoku this week.
Matthew's in on David Njoku, and I'm in on the Browns and Pigskin Pick'em. How about you, Stefania?
Yeah, give me the Browns. And by the way, the Panthers just signed Catanzaro as a kicker. With
Chandler
Catanzaro with Graham Gano with a knee injury, and he's been wildly inconsistent. So if you have him in your lineup, as I still managed to have him in one of mine, take him out.
All righty. Daniel, who you got?
I'm actually going to take the Panthers here, and I did get a notification from the Fantasy Life app that Duke Johnson, who's been away for the last couple of days to deal with the death of his grandmother, Michael Silver is saying that he is he may not return for Sunday's game.
Yes, but
he rejoined the team.
That's right. The Fantasy Life app then sent out another update from Mary Kay Cabot, who covers the team for the Cleveland Plain Dealer.
I saw that as well.
And he was at the practice facility today. He was in team meetings today. So I think the expectation is because he's back with the team that he'll play on Sunday.
Oh, that's what the expectation is.
That's how I would interpret that. If he's back in the building, yes, on Friday, that he has attended to his family duties and he is. That's my assumption. I guess obviously tune into Fantasy Football Now on Sunday morning. Be aware. But my expectation is that Duke Johnson would play on Sunday. I'm going to take the Panthers in this one and just remind everyone the Fantasy Life app is 100% free. The updates absolutely crush. There's a reason why we have 4.8 stars on the App Store. Seriously, just go get the Fantasy Life app. It absolutely crushes.
The ESPN Minus Show app has 5 stars and no big deal.
That's accurate. That is accurate.
One rating, and it was from me, but it's 5 stars. You're super consistent. The Saints travel to Tampa Bay to avenge the Week 1 loss and also their Week 13 loss against the Dallas Cowboys. So it's 10 days ago. For the Saints, you're starting Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, and Mike Thomas. The one thing that we're going to mention to you, and this pertains obviously to both teams, and a lot can change. So we really encourage you to watch fantasy football now on Sunday morning, is that Sean Payton has spent a ton of time talking about the weather in Tampa Bay this weekend. It's supposed to be wet. It's always unpredictable in Tampa. We also know that a shower can be there at 12:55 and it can be gone by 1:02. So keep an eye out and watch us on Fantasy Football Now. We will finish the show on ESPN2. Not entirely sure if we start on ESPN2, but from 10 to 1, we will have the latest on any potential
We don't know where we are this weekend? It changes every week. It's really frustrating. It's what it is. No, but I know we don't even know where to promote. Anyway, come find us. Follow me on Twitter. Follow at Field Yates. Follow at Stefania_ESPN. I'm sure we will all tweet out Sunday morning where you can find Fantasy Football Now.
All right. So for the Bucs, Jameis Winston and Mike Evans are players you feel good about.
Real quickly, can I just say this real quick? I just also want to say, like, for people that, like, my love-hate list, like, I have Drew Brees as a love. But if there's significant weather concerns, things change. I write the love-hate on Wednesday morning and Wednesday afternoon. Like, Wednesday is the day that I write love-hate. And obviously a lot can change between Wednesday when I write the column and Sunday morning. So it's always just like,
it's dynamic.
Pay attention.
It's kind of like you. It's dynamic.
Sure.
Fluid is
fluid.
better.
That's definitely what I am.
Because he's not dynamic.
I have dynamic moments, Starfania Bell.
Oh, okay.
I have dynamic moments.
Loosely defined dynamic Matthew Berry. You're starting Jameis Winston and Mike Evans. Although Evans hasn't been great recently, he's still Mike Evans. The target share is certainly there. Deshaun Jackson, Stefania, unlikely to play in this game.
Not practicing again today. This is 3 days. His thumb has been an issue for him. There's some rumblings about whether you're going to see him again this season, but I certainly don't think you're going to see him this week.
Maybe his final day as a Buccaneer has come because he's not expected to be back with the team next season based off of the price he is owed.
And small sample size here, Field, but in the 3 games in which Deshaun Jackson has not played, Chris Godwin averaging 19.3 fantasy points per game. Just for comparison, Odell Beckham averaging 19.2 this year.
Did you just say that Chris Godwin's better than Odell?
Obviously, that's exactly what I said.
ESPN Radio. Breaking news.
Sure, feel free to knock yourself out. No, look, all I'm saying is that there's a big opportunity that when Deshaun Jackson has been out, again, it's super small sample size, Chris Godwin has taken advantage. And so for those that are looking for sort of a desperation flyer this week, or more importantly, somebody to think about for DFS,
How about a
Chris
flex
Godwin
play too? Adam Humphries, 5 straight games with at least 50 yards and 5 touchdowns in that time. I'm taking the Saints. I think they're going to be mad. I think they're ready to win. How about you, Stefania?
I'm taking the Saints.
All right, Matthew.
What's the line?
8.5 points.
Ooh, doggy. That is.
You're taking the Bucs?
After the last time they faced them, there's no way that's being reproduced.
I'm taking the Saints. Even if it's a wet game, the Saints have a better running back core.
Yeah.
If it's not a wet game, the Saints have a better passing game.
Who you got?
8.5's a lot. I'm taking the Bucs to cover.
Wow,
believe it or not.
Beignets get 3 out of 4 votes here.
I think they. I literally think this will be the definition of a backdoor cover. I think the Saints get up big, and then I think there's some junk time from Winston, and I think it's a backdoor cover. I definitely think the Saints win this game.
Got it. So now I know that whenever someone references a backdoor cover like Stanford Steve or the Bear Chris Felica, what they're talking about is that Jameis Winston throws a late touchdown against the Saints. That's what a backdoor cover means, literally. The definition.
Accurate.
Right?
Yeah, that's right. That is accurate.
Got it. Indianapolis Colts go to Houston to play the red
textbook.
hot,
Would you prefer textbook for me?
Yeah, that works too. Yeah, textbook. Yeah. Texans host the Colts. The Texans have won 90 straight games. It's pretty remarkable given that they only play once a week. For the Colts, you are starting Andrew Luck, T.Y. Hilton, and Eric Ebron. And if you're saying, wait, I saw Ebron and Hilton on the injury report this week, Stefania, I turn to you.
Yeah, again, this is one of those where earlier in the season I would have been far more concerned, but this is the point in the season where guys get managed a little bit differently. So neither T.Y. Hilton nor Eric Ebron has practiced at all yet this week. but I would bet that you're going to see them out there today. Nothing considered to be serious here. T.Y. took a fall on his shoulder, got banged up a little bit, and Eric Ebron's back has been bothering him, also listed with an illness, so I think they want to make sure he's healthy. Obviously, without Jack Doyle, they need Eric Ebron, so I think both of them will be out there today and will play on Sunday.
Okay, that's good news right there. Marlon Mack is more of a flex play for us this week. He's averaging 5 yards per carry this season. The Texans have been a little bit less stout against the run of late. The issue for Marlon Mack is coming off of a game in which he got bottled up by the Jaguars defense, which sounds weird after what you watched last night, but the Jaguars can play good run defense. It was Nyheim Hines who got all the work last week in that Colts backfield. He had 9 catches, but we figure game script works much more in Marlon Mack's favor this week as compared to where it was last week, where they did not score a single point. But the Texans are sort of interesting here. Lamar Miller and DeAndre Hopkins, you're starting them because they have been good. DeAndre Hopkins is always good. But how about Deshaun Watson here? Deshaun Watson has 7 straight games under 240 passing yards. He's had a couple of explosion games, and he's certainly done some damage with his legs here. Matthew, you still like Deshaun Watson all the same?
Yeah, I mean, I have him just inside my my top 10, right? So you think about week 4 when he played these Colts previously. He was the 6th best quarterback in fantasy that week. Actually had a season high 31 fantasy points, threw for 375 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 carries for 41 yards and a touchdown. And that's what you're banking on here with Deshaun Watson, because I get you with the volume, right? But the legs, over his last 2 games, 16 carries, 100 yards, and a touchdown. Obviously, that one big run influences that, but that still counts. It's still part of his skill set. Like, sure, that wasn't like wow, where did that come from? We know how athletic Deshaun Watson is, you want to talk about dynamic? Deshaun Watson, actually dynamic.
That is a good use of the description.
I appreciate that. I also think, by the way, like Andrew Luck made my love list this week. Andrew Luck, the last time these 2 teams played, threw the ball 62 times. I believe this is good. I understand the Texans are a lot hotter, and I get it that the Colts came off just a brutal game against the Jaguars last week. I think volume here keeps both guys in play. I don't think Deshaun Watson's going to be able to play a low volume game in this one, not against the Colts.
Okay, fair enough right there. I think Deshaun Watson is going to be a worse play this week than Matt Ryan. You feel the opposite.
So it's Deshaun Watson versus Matt Ryan?
Would you like to make a board bet involving Deshaun Watson and Matt Ryan?
I say Deshaun Watson has more fantasy points in week 14 than Matt Ryan.
I say Matt Ryan has more fantasy points week 14 than Deshaun Watson. Put it on the board.
Put it on the board.
Nailed it right
just
there.
Won another board bet.
Texans are 4.5 point favorites in this game, as I just win another board bet myself. Texans cover. How about you guys? What do you think?
Texans are 4.5 point favorites?
Yep.
I'm going to say the Colts.
Daniel?
Colt up.
I'm going to take the Colts as well.
Okay. Stefania?
I'm going to take the Texans and our hot defense. By the way, I don't think Kiki Cutie is back this week, still dealing with a hamstring injury for the Texans.
Kiki QT. Not going to play. All right, we're going to take a quick break and come back and talk about the best quarterback in the NFL. Who might it be?
Did you know ADT can design and install a smart home just for you? A new smart home at your service, customized for your lifestyle. ADT's automation even unlocks the front door for friends who arrive at your place early for the game while you're still out getting snacks. Now that's what I call game day service. It's all controlled from the ADT app or the sound of your voice and backed by 24/7 protection. Visit ADT.com/smart to learn more about how ADT can help keep your home safe and smart.
Fantasy, you're in the 06010. Focus. Fantasy focus.
All right, and now it is time for the Friday edition of the ZipRecruiter's Smartest Fan of the Week.
Hi, this is Brielle Flores and ZipRecruiter and Smart Fan of the Week, and I love Todd Gurley. Now back to the show.
That was the cutest thing I've ever heard.
Super
I
cute.
love Todd Gurley.
Is that what you said?
amazing.
It was hard to
Let's
understand.
listen to it one more time. We'll make sure that we got that right.
Hi, this is Brielle Flores and ZipRecruiter and Smart Fan of the Week, and I love Todd Gurley. Now back to the show.
I love Todd Gurley and back to the show.
I love Todd Gurley and back to the show.
That's amazing.
There you go.
I
So
love Todd
cute.
Gurley too. That adorable youngster. That was really
I
cute
know.
there. Ravens go to Kansas City to play at Arrowhead. Thank you, Stefania. A little bit of revenge for Stefania. And the Chiefs, who are very good, of course, 9-2 this season, 10-2 this season, excuse me. I shortchanged them a win. For the Ravens, this is a really interesting game. It's not about any of the injuries here, but the Chiefs are red hot offensively all year. They are incredible. No one has been able to slow down the Chiefs. In the 2 games they've lost, they've scored 91 points. 45.5 points per game and a loss. They became the first team to ever score 50 points and lose a game in the NFL. So, the Ravens, they have to find a way to keep up this weekend. Their offense over the past 3 weeks, Lamar Jackson, has merely been outscore you by just a whisker.
A whisker.
Can the Ravens formula work against the Chiefs? Because if it can't, Matthew, can you start anybody? Gus Edwards is a non-factor in the passing game. None of the pass catchers catch anything. So, can the Ravens duplicate what works? And if so, that would probably mean that Lamar Jackson or Gus Edwards
Lamar
is worthwhile.
Jackson's going to have to rush for 300 yards.
But if they have to change the script, does that mean that one of the wide receivers becomes viable?
In theory, sure. Do I think on Monday we're sitting here talking about wow, so-and-so had a great game? I couldn't tell you who it'll be.
Okay.
There's not been nearly enough volume or anything, any sort of data on a Lamar Jackson-led offense that leads you to believe Crabtree's a great start this week. Yeah. John Brown is, or whatever, Willie Snead. It's just, I think it is truly a dart throw. So the question is, can the formula work? It's the NFL. Anything's possible. Anything's possible. I mean, Josh Allen went into Minnesota and we were like, well, and they blew out the Vikings. Any given Sunday, right? So anything can happen. I think it is unlikely, however, right? Because my expectation is what the Ravens are going to try to do here is they're going to say hey, you see what the Cowboys did to the Saints? We're going to try to, play great defense, run the ball, control the clock, not let them have a lot of possessions here, be very aggressive defensively, and just try to grind out a 13-10 win. What the Cowboys did to the Saints last Thursday night to me, that's the perfect game script for what Baltimore should try to accomplish.
It's just not going to happen.
But
I think the only way the Ravens are in this is if they get scored. The Ravens defense to me, they're the boomer bust because they have an opportunity to make plays off defense and score and keep their offense in the mix. But I just don't. Patrick Mahomes has proven that he is matchup proof in terms of putting up points.
I certainly have to imagine.
Can he make mistakes that offer the Ravens defense an opportunity? Yes, but is he going to put up points? Absolutely.
So it really boils down to who do you believe in more? The Ravens defense or Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid? Oh, Fields, I'll call on you.
I'll take the guy that's going to throw for 50 touchdown passes this year and literally rolls out of bed and throws for 350 yards and is amazing and is my favorite player in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes.
I would agree with you, Field Yates. This stat is crazy. There's all sorts of crazy stats involving Patrick Mahomes, but this one is very simply, it's very simple and I think tells you everything you know. 5 of the past 7 games, he's had at least 4 touchdown passes.
Is that good?
In 5 of the last 7.
Sounds good.
It's really where do you put your, where do you side? And I'm with you, Field. I'm siding with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. I have Lamar Jackson outside my top 15. I have Gus Edwards who, is not part of the passing game here. So if they get down big, it's going to be a lot more Ty Montgomery and Ken Dixon. So, I have him outside my top 20, Gus Edwards. And as good as the Ravens defense is, I think you're looking elsewhere. It just depends on sort of what else is on the waiver wire. I will say this. I wouldn't start a bad defense in what could quote unquote, I wouldn't start the Jets defense because you're they're playing the Bills. I think that gets dangerous. Right. I think the Jets are just bad. But I would start the Bills defense over them.
Oh, yeah. The Bills are good. The Bills are really good defense.
Bills are really good defense. So I think check our rankings, and I think it just depends on what other options you have available to you. I will say the Cowboys are out there in a lot of leagues, and I would prefer them.
Yeah, Cowboys,
I'll make a call.
Certainly very available. The Chiefs are playing them. The only question mark for injury stuff, Stefania, is Sammy Watkins.
Right, Sammy Watkins, who hasn't played in a couple of weeks because of a foot issue. And I think, again, look at the teams who are looking at a long postseason run, and I'll show you teams who are being conservative in terms of managing their athletes. So Sammy Watkins back in practice. He's already done more this week with 2 limited practices than he has in the past 2 weeks. So you certainly think that gives him a chance, but until we get through Friday, we're not sure.
I will say I don't think Spencer Ware is a must start in this one, Field. I have him just outside my top 20 here. Remember the Ravens, since their week 10 bye, opposing running backs averaging 36 rushing yards, 2.6 yards per carry against the Ravens. They allow the 3rd fewest rushing yards per game this season. Spencer Ware, looked fine last week, but may take him a little bit to get up to speed. I just think his projection is 13 points, and I don't know how much he's going to be involved in the passing game in this one. I think, listen, Andy Reid will design some plays that feature what he does well better than Kareem Hunt. He's a different kind of player. And so last week they just sort of had the game plan they'd already established. Having said that, I don't think Spencer Ware, especially against a Ravens defense, is a must start. I think he's kind of a borderline RB2.
Chiefs are 6.5-point favorites in this game. I think the Chiefs win and cover. Matthew?
Yeah.
This is a question mark for you?
Yeah, give me the Chiefs.
Daniel?
I'm going to take the Chiefs as well.
All right, here we go to the Patriots and the Dolphins.
Bet the
Patriots are playing in Miami. They're 8.5-point favorites. You're starting basically every Patriot. Sony Michel, James White, Edelman, Gordon, Gronk. All players of note were removed from the injury report on Thursday. Now, that might be one of those where they pop back up on Friday because they have a different type of practice, but the point is health is not a concern in terms of having these players on the field. The only question mark with the Patriots is Tom Brady, who I've got at 11. Matthew, you have him at 17. I'm not sure why Matthew hates Tom Brady, other than the fact that he hasn't been very good this year for fantasy football.
He has failed to throw multiple touchdown passes in 4 of the past 5 games this year, right? He's just been bad.
Yeah.
Week 4 against Miami, when he was playing a little bit better, he was QB 16.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Since week 8, the Dolphins actually create pressure at the 7th highest rate. Brady has been bad against pressure. This feels like one of those games that everyone expects them to just go in, and I don't know. This one doesn't feel good to me for Brady. I think it's a big Sony Michel game. I think they run the ball very effectively here against Miami.
So here's the good news for Brady.
I don't know that Brady has a massive fantasy day.
The good news for Brady is this. He has 9 straight games with at least 250 passing yards. So the floor has been set there, right? 10 points. That has been good from Brady. I don't want to say he's been unlucky. They're 9-3. You know, that's not unlucky. But he has been so low volume in terms of throwing touchdowns from goal-to-go situations. My hedge is that happens this week. The Dolphins' best player, not like their best secondary player, not their best defensive player, their best player, period, is Xavier Howard. He hasn't practiced at all this week. He is their, not quite Darrelle Revis, but the idea is it's rare that we call a cornerback the best player on the team. Xavier Howard is that player. He's missed practice all week. Very unlikely to play on Sunday.
And that, I will tell you this, that certainly makes the confidence that I would have in Josh Gordon, who he was expected to shadow, certainly rise up.
Yep.
The one thing I agree with everything you just said, but just worth noting, Tom Brady in week 4 against Miami threw for 274 yards. He threw 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He had 2 picks, but he was still QB 16. I mean, quarterback scoring is at such an all-time high. That's the problem. And so, he could have a good game here and still finishes like a, QB 15 or 14 on the week. And
I understand.
He's going to need some of those sort of gimme touchdowns. Those, whatever they run like a pick rub kind of play, and it's a screen pass to Gronk on the 3-yard line kind of thing, and he waltzes the end zone, which they used to do, and now they've just been giving it to Sony Michel or James Devlin. Don't get me started. Yeah.
Sad face. Yeah, Devlin must start this weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, so I guess my point here, Field, is just this, that if you're in the playoffs, it is despite Tom Brady, not because of Tom Brady.
Correct.
Is that fair? So chances are you have a better option than Tom Brady on your roster. It's a good matchup, and I would never doubt Tom Brady. It wouldn't shock me if the guy throws 6 touchdown passes because he's Tom Brady, but I don't think he has a massive fantasy day here because I think they run on this team big way, and the volume just hasn't been there recently.
Kenyon Drake, the only Dolphin to really consider. He's a top 30 running back for us, but you don't feel great about it. You just don't. Danny Amendola might play Stefania, but still, that'd be super.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is like if you have a massive hole in your roster and you're looking for somebody. Just to be informed, Danny Amendola missed last week's game, now back practicing and expected to play.
If you need somebody, he is in fact somebody.
He is somebody.
He qualifies at that.
If you need a wide receiver, he does have wide receiver eligibility.
He has wide receiver eligibility.
All right, Patriots are 8.5-point favorites. I'll take the Patriots in this one. Matthew, who do you got? It's always close in Miami for whatever reason.
It is. I know. It is. It's one of those weird. They always have trouble at Miami.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the Dolphins. I think the Patriots win, but I think the Dolphins make it closer than people think. They're 6-6. They're fighting for a playoff spot. People forget that.
Daniel,
as bad as it's been for Miami, they're in the playoff race.
I'm going to take the Patriots.
All right. Daniel is also Team Handsome picking the Patriots. Bengals and Chargers. This game is being played in Los Angeles. Let's start with the Bengals. Obviously, we know that A.J. Green is out, but could Joe Mixon also join him on the sidelines, Stefania?
Yeah, Joe Mixon's been on the injury report, but I don't think, as far as we know right now, that he's expected to miss. I was still back on the fact that I didn't get to pick the last game, but I picked the Patriots. But that's
I
okay.
thought you said I thought I heard you say the Patriots when you were disagreeing with Matthew. Sorry.
No. I was making sure Daniel had it recorded, so I'm multitasking here.
Okay.
But yes, on Joe Mixon, yes, he's on the injury report. He has been there a couple of times, but I don't think there's any threat to his status. We will see. Good. If he's on the practice field, hopefully by the end of the show, we will know.
Good news there. You're starting Tyler Boyd, and you may not want to start Joe Mixon this week. Mike made a pretty compelling case earlier on this week that he does not want to start Joe Mixon against this Chargers defense. We all kind of have him as a start, though. Are we? Like,
I can't imagine. I mean, I didn't hear Mike's argument, and I'm sure it's well thought out and reasoned. A lot of it was
personal towards you.
That makes sense.
Right? Yeah.
I can't imagine if Joe Mixon is healthy. And I get it, it's not a great matchup here, but just the volume. And I can't imagine you having two better running backs on your team than Joe Mixon. Maybe you do, but I don't know. If Joe Mixon's on my team, I'm starting Joe Mixon this week. Tyler Boyd, I am, look, he's going to be against Desmond King in this one. Chargers are so good against the slot. I am lowering expectations for Tyler Boyd, who weirdly has actually had less targets and less fantasy points per game with AJ Green out of the lineup this year when AJ Green has been in.
Yeah. He just hasn't really moved the needle that much dramatically one way or the other. For the Chargers, you're starting Phillip Rivers and Keenan Allen, but Stephania, it just feels like Melvin Gordon is a long shot at this point.
Yeah, I really don't think he's going to play. Look, again, everybody looking to the big picture. This is an MCL injury, which is really tough on running backs, especially lateral agility, the last thing that you incorporate, and he's not practicing at all. If he's not practicing at all, then I don't think he's ready. You're not going to put a guy out there who you had concerns about with the opposite knee, who ended up with a new knee injury, in a position where A, he could aggravate it just from planning and cutting, or B, he risks the contact. So don't plan on Melvin Gordon this week.
So without Melvin Gordon, it turns once again to Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson. And so I have Eckler at 18. I have Jackson at 26. So I have them fairly close. I'm picking Eckler over Jackson right now, but candidly, I don't feel great about it, especially after what we saw against Pittsburgh last week. You guys have more confidence. There's a much wider spread, Field and Stephania, between these two players.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Jackson barely played last week. It's like a 47-18 snap edge for Austin Eckler. So it certainly could be much more even this week, especially if this game is a blowout. But I have to go into this game operating under the presumption they're going to be more likely to give Eckler, even if it's 2/3 to 1/3, which is why I have the confidence in Eckler, more adept in the passing game as well.
The only concern for me is the quote from Anthony Lynn. I don't know if you saw it this week. The quote from Anthony Lynn talking about how they feel like Eckler's getting a little bit worn down as the season's going on, and he's really important to their special teams as well. So, he mentioned, that he did mention that you'll see more Justin Jackson this weekend. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean 5 more snaps? Does it mean 20 more snaps? So we don't know. And again, we all have Eckler over Jackson, but I think they're a little bit closer than maybe you guys have.
Just good to note that Anthony Lynn is a former NFL running back, special teams player too, but so he knows the workload that goes into both of those jobs for Austin Eckler.
Correct.
Chargers are 14.5 point favorites. The Bengals are 5-1 at one point, or at least 4-1. Yeah. What has happened to you?
Yeah.
I'm picking the Bengals to cover. It just feels so disparate. That feels way too large. Daniel, who you got?
I agree with you. 14.5 is too much. I love the Chargers offense, but I don't have this much confidence that they're just going to be able to blow the Bengals out by 2 scores.
Matthew?
I'm taking the Chargers. Go Chargers, go! Go Chargers, go! Listen, Jeff Driscoll coming into L.A., that ferocious L.A. crowd that'll,
I'm going to take the Chargers.
Eat their sushi at halftime.
I'm 90% positive you took the Chargers just so you could. You'll take a loss just so you could say that one line.
The Broncos go to San Francisco.
Go Chargers, go!
Stefania's beloved 49ers. For the Broncos, you are starting Phillip Lindsay. Of course, Emmanuel Sanders is out of this game. He's out for the season because of that Achilles tear. Brutal news. So what is the level of comfort you have this week, Matthew, in Cortland Sutton? How high does he climb in your rankings?
I have him as a borderline wide receiver, too. I have him right now at 22 Friday morning as we step, and I always tweak it over the weekend as well. But, listen, at a season high in targets last week, he had 7. And then you think about this matchup, against a 49ers team that, candidly has struggled against the deep ball, right? So I don't know. San Francisco, they're the only defense in the NFL has yet to intercept a deep pass. You can throw deep on them without really a lot of concern here. And so Sutton, who's going to be sort of the only guy. You had a great tweet the other day as soon as this news came out that he was the only receiver.
Besides Cortland Sutton, the next receiver in terms of yardage this year is Tim Patrick with 73 yards.
Right.
Now, obviously, they traded away Demaryius Thomas, which accounts for part of it.
Right.
And the Sanders, obviously, is a huge part of it.
And they've got Deshaun Hamilton, who will be opposite.
But very few established pass catchers right now in Denver. They claimed Andre Holmes, and normally I'd wonder if a player's even going to be on the field 3 days after being claimed. Like, he could start for them based off how thin their wide receiver depth chart is right now.
My expectation is it's going to be Cortland Sutton and Deshaun Hamilton, but Sutton's the only guy that you can start with any confidence. Remember, Jeff Hoyerman not in this game.
He's out.
Probably it's going to be.
He's not. He won't be in any game.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, like even their their starting tight end. So it's just a mess in Denver. Expect obviously a ton of work for Phillip Lindsay.
George Kittle is a starter for the 49ers. Jeff Wilson is likely to be a starter as well. As we know, Matt Breed is out in this game. Stefania, your resident Bay Area expert. What's your confidence in your interest in Jeff Wilson? And then Dante Pettis Jr.
Yeah.
Did I just add a junior to his name, or is he actually Dante?
I think he's just Dante Pettis. Okay. I think you added junior. It's just
He has another big game. I might call myself Dante Pettis Sr. just to take credit for him.
Look, I like what I've seen from Dante Pettis. Certainly his volume with Nick Mullins has been there, more than 6 targets in 3 straight games. So I feel confident that you will get. Look, you could get some viability in. You want like a handful of points from a flex play. You'll get them from Dante Pettis. I like the way Jeff Wilson looks. They like the way he runs. There's a really nice story on him and sort of how he grew up watching Adrian Peterson run. And he used to go to his games at Friday Night Lights in Texas when Adrian Peterson was in high school. And like he did though, because he lived out in the country, like flipping tires and running hills when he was in high school to build himself as a tough running back. And that's what he brings to the 49ers. That's why they liked him. So I like Jeff Wilson. He's getting his chance to shine a little bit with the injured Matt Breida keeping him out this week. But I don't know that, to me he's a flex play because I just don't know what the 49ers are going to be able to produce offensively as a whole.
Feel pretty good about Jeff Wilson myself. Dante Pettis though, like, I understand, like he's one of the real dart throws of this week because it's possible that Marquise Goodwin's back and all of a sudden the workload reduces for Dante Pettis, but he's one of those guys that we're going to start talking about like Deshaun Jackson. Like the big plays are just more repeatable with him than other players in the NFL. He's a special guy to watch right now.
He was injured at the start of the year, so I think there was like a flash, and I kind of liked him early in the season, and then he was injured and he was out for a while, and that's sort of when everybody was hurt, and now he's just getting back into it.
And we had some fun with him on the fantasy show on ESPN Plus. I did, when I went out to the NFLPA rookie premiere, we interviewed every rookie, and I asked all of them who should be the number 1 pick in fantasy. And, it was, anyway, you should, if you go to my Twitter feed, or my Instagram feed, at Matthew Berry TMR, you'll see Dante Pettis' answer to that question, which, will surprise you. I'll leave it at that.
49ers are 5.5-point dogs. I think the Broncos win this one. Sorry, Stefania.
No. Look, the 49ers have no secondary, and Cortland Sutton could have a big game, I feel.
Matthew?
So, yeah, Broncos.
5.5 is the line?
Yeah.
I'm taking the 49ers. Like, give me some.
I hope you're right.
Give me some Nick Mullins.
I hope you're right.
Yeah, I'm going to take Nick Mullins, Dante Pettis. What's the guy's name?
Jeff Wilson Jr.
Jeff Wilson
and
Jr.
George Kittle.
George Kittle.
Who's been amazing. I mean, he's been really the revelation there.
Case Keenum versus Nick Mullins. This is the NFL.
All right. You got your pick
game.
Huh?
You got your pick?
I said the Broncos because I feel that that's what's going to happen, not what I want.
By the way,
to be clear,
just worth noting, Nick Mullins versus Case Keenum in San Francisco. Those tickets are also available on SeatGeek.
The Rams at the Bears.
I'm sure because I'm sure the game's sold out. Just but if you need to go, just want to let people know where they can get in to see that.
Bears at Rams, Sunday Night Football. Obviously, you're starting Todd Gurley, Brandon Cooks, and Robert Woods. But
I've heard of those guys.
How about Jared Goff? Are you playing Jared Goff against an excellent Chicago defense this weekend, Matthew?
Probably not.
Okay.
I mean, it all sort of depends on who all you have. He made the hate list this week. I have him at 12, so I'm just outside my top 10. Again, in a 12-team league, I guess you are starting him. But I took the under on 18.8 fantasy points, which is what his projection is this week. I mean, they have the lowest opposing QBR this season. That's the Bears, right? They're allowing the 3rd lowest yards for pass attempts. They allow a league low 2.5 red zone drives per game. When they are at home, they've been nothing short of terrific. Vegas, in terms of the over-under, they're projecting the Rams to score 27, 28 points, something in there. Well, when the Rams fail to score 35 points in a game this season, Jared Goff is averaging 15 fantasy points a game. And so, I don't know, I think, look, I'll never put anything past Sean McVay, who's, one of the all-time great coaches in the NFL. But yeah, this one.
All time already.
Wow.
I've said this. I've been consistent in this, that when it all, I have been, and everyone thinks I'm all hot talky. I know. He's not yet. I've said this, and I'm not trying to be all hot takey or anything like that. I truly believe this. When all is said and done, Sean McVay will be considered one of the 5 best coaches in NFL history.
Yeah. I love Sean McVay. I got a major kick out of people being agape at the idea of him knowing the starters for the Bears.
Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah.
Fine, then take me on, because I loved it. And I was I was one of the ones.
Great.
But listen.
No, look.
It's his job.
Yes, but that's
correct. I'm with you.
But that is not the point. If you've been following the posts on Sean McVay, it was also that he's been able to pull up these plays and coverages, name players who are on the field and situational things.
He's got a ridiculous memory.
Right. And also it's the way he did it. It's the way, the timing. So forgive me for being impressed by somebody who's got a great memory when I know that no matter how much I prepare, I could never pull off something like that.
When Jeff Fisher played
Danny Amendola. Danny Amendola. Him for, they were talking about
Danny Woodhead.
Well, Danny Amendola was I think he was or he was confusing Danny Woodhead with Danny Amendola. Like, Woodhead had not been a Patriot for 3 years. He's like, talking about Danny. Yeah, trust me.
Look, I get it that guys prepare and they should know the defenses they're facing, but I'm still going to remark on Sean McVay's memory and the way he rattles things off at a quick, I'm sorry, but all these people who chose to take the pot shots at people like me who were impressed, I still choose to be impressed.
That's fair enough. Listen, there's not a bigger Sean McVay fan other than Mama McVay.
When your memory starts to fail you, you will be when you're not young and your memory starts to disappear. You will be impressed.
All I'm saying is I'm Team Field here on this one, which is again, I'm as big a Sean McVay fan as there is. I was not like, whoa, he knows the defense.
It wasn't about that.
There are a lot of other ways to impress us with Sean McVay. So let's just keep going. We got a tight schedule here coming up. The Rams play all those guys. Jared Goff, you're less convinced on because they're playing the Bears defense. How about the Bears, though, themselves? You're starting Tariq Cohen. He's been red hot. Stefania, do we think Tariq Cohen will be catching passes from Chase Daniel or Mitch Trubisky?
Oh, it's going to be Mitch Trubisky. He's been back in practice. I think the question we all want to answer is how effective he'll be, and we're not going to know until we see him. But they've already been, I think, a little more conservative than people might have expected when they heard about the injury, that it wasn't serious, and then he wasn't throwing for a while. I think this has just been the Bears playing it smart with him. So I fully expect him to be the one who's on the field this weekend.
That's good news there for Mitch Trubisky and the Bears. Matthew, can you play any Bear besides Tariq Cohen? Everybody has mitigating circumstances. Trey Burton feels like he hasn't caught a pass in a month. Jordan Howard is touchdown dependent.
This is correct, but I will say, I have Trey Burton as a top 12 play this week. So depending on the size of your league and who else you have, I do actually like Burton, and I know how brutal he was last week and the bagel and everything like that. But you think about going into last week. The Rams had allowed a tight end to score in 3 straight games, 4 of their past 5, and last week a tight end didn't score against them. But it was Levine Toilolo, and he got 90 yards, just 30 more yards than he'd had for the entire season. And so, in just the way the Rams play defense sort of funnels to the tight end, I do think, especially with Trubisky back into an elevated play at quarterback, I like Trey Burton this week.
Rams are 3.5-point favorites. Game of the week here. I think the Rams win this one. How about you, Matthew?
I am taking the Rams at 3. Yeah, I'm going to still take the Rams.
All right, Daniel.
I am going to take the Rams as well. Did you already mention, am I playing the Bears defense against this Rams team?
We didn't get into that, and that's a great question because the Bears, who have been so good this year, they've scored 12 or more fantasy points 8 times this year. That's more than any other defense.
I feel the same way about them as I do the Ravens.
Yeah.
And even more confident in the Rams at home as opposed to
the Bears at home.
Sorry, the Bears at home versus the Ravens on the road.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Don't bench them for the Jets, but if the Bills or the Cowboys are sitting there, heck yeah.
I mean, I listen. In the playoff game in the fantasy show league and on the fantasy show on ESPN Plus, so we have a league there, and I started the Titans defense last night.
Tighten up,
and because the Bears have been my defense all year long, and I benched them. Remember, 7 different times this year, a defense facing the Rams has failed to score positive points. Field. So I mean, it's so I'm not benching them for a bad defense, but if there's a viable defense out there, which I thought the Titans at home on a short week against Cody Kessler were a viable defense, obviously, so I started them, and that ended up working out. But it depends on sort of who you have, but I don't think they're a must start, but I also don't think they're a must bench.
All right, Steelers at the Raiders. This game being played in Oakland. Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster are all starters. But Jalen Samuels is kind of interesting. At the beginning of the week, Mike Tomlin said, our intention is to go running back by committee. By the end of the week, it may be that someone has emerged. If you listen to Jalen Samuels this week, he has been like weirdly transparent. Like, yeah, it's going to be me, and it's going to be Ridley, and it's going to be me. It's like he is everybody is painting the picture of a committee, but you're not buying it.
I don't know that I don't know that I don't want to buy it, but I think that they may split the running back carries.
Okay.
But Samuels is going to be the pass catcher. And so as we talk about the PPR format, which is the default format, and that's, all of our rankings and projections are based on PPR that we talk about here. I don't know, going against, an Oakland team that, has struggled, pretty much in every aspect, right? 29th against the run, the 26th worst scoring defense over the last 4 weeks in both those categories here. Think about how much the Steelers throw to the running back. Yeah, I mean, I think Jalen Samuels is a top 20 play this week at running back.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing him play at running back this weekend. I think I'm going to probably have him moved up a little bit by the time we get to Sunday, as we get more and more confident he will be the workhorse for them.
But I do think, I think Ridley is Ridley certainly needs to be rostered because we just don't know. And as Stefan just talked about, like, we think there's a chance James Conner's injury is not just a 1 week deal.
Yep. I would say that is definitely a chance.
Let's keep an eye out on that, obviously, as we get through Sunday. For the Raiders, you're starting Jared Cook. Doug Martin's banged up. I don't think you feel good about starting anybody in this backfield. Martin's run well, but what if they're down big in this game against the Steelers? It's going to be throw to catch up. Steelers are 11.5-point favorites in this game. It's a big number going on the road, but I think the Pittsburgh Steelers win and cover. Matty B?
Yeah.
On you, B.
I'll take the Steelers.
Steelers.
Daniel?
I'm going to take the Steelers as well.
Okay. Sounds good. That sounds great. The Lions at the Cardinals. This game is being played in Arizona. Just 40.5 is the over-under.
Tickets to this game also available on SeatGeek, right?
That's
but
correct.
Just by the way, Lions at Cardinals.
The Kerryon Johnson seems unlucky to play for the Lions. He has mispracticed yet again, Stefania.
Yeah. I mean, look, if he surprises us and he's out there today, but he's not been there at all. They won't say a thing. Those Lions, they won't talk about their players at all. They just say check the injury report. So if you check the injury report, he's not there.
And he probably will not play.
There you go.
On
She's not
Sunday.
the best in the business for nothing, Field.
Look,
Kenny Galladay is
a team who doesn't talk at all unreasonably.
Matthew, you've got Kenny Galladay as a hate this week. Explain yourself.
Yeah, well, look, I still have him as a top 20 wide receiver this week, but as you know, love-hate is all about projections, and we project him for 13.8 fantasy points. I'm taking the under here, right? I mean, so honestly, like, he's caught just 50% of his targets over the last 4 games. Matthew Stafford's been bad, right? Cardinals top 10 defense in terms of deep touchdown pass percentage against this season. They're allowing the 7th fewest yards per deep completion. They've been good against the deep pass, and my expectation is that when you think about the rest of the pass catchers in Detroit, they're going to put Patrick Peterson, who sometimes shadows. Patrick Peterson is going to follow Kenny Galladay all over the field. And so given inconsistent, and that's being kind, Secret Squirrel, inconsistent quarterback play from Matthew Stafford, game on the road, Patrick Peterson shadow, like he's been up and down. Kenny Galladay has recently. Certainly didn't have a great game last week in what should have been a good matchup. So yeah, I'm taking the under on 13.8 points. But again, as I said, I still have him as a top 20 play, but I think people might see Arizona and think he's going to be better than I think he will be.
I don't think we expect Chase Edmonds to vulture 2 more touchdowns this weekend, which is why you're still starting David Johnson, and you're hopeful on Larry Fitzgerald. You're hopeful that he can be the touchdown-dependent flex he has been of late. He's scoring plenty of touchdowns. The volume has not been there. This offense is not very good. They're often difficult to watch. The Lions are on the road, 2.5-point favorites. Because I love Daniel, I'm taking the Lions here.
I am not taking Lions. Like, Kerryon Johnson, not at practice again today. So there you go. He's not going to play. But Matthew Stafford on the injury report with a back issue. Now he's going to play, but Lions are banged up and they're terrible. Sorry, Daniel. Taking the Cardinals.
I'm with Starfania Bell over here. Give me the Cardinals at home, getting some points.
Daniel, who do you got?
This is hard for me. If I knew that Kenny Galladay was going to get 15 targets and they were just going to force feed him over and over, I would take the Lions. But I don't feel like that's the way the Lions have played lately, which means I have to take the Cardinals.
Wow.
And I will say, if Kerryon Johnson's going to miss this game, I do think LeGarrette Blount is an interesting desperation play. Arizona really struggles against the run.
When we say one pride, I don't mean like one pride as I'm like, I'm the only person with pride, Daniel. One pride, baby.
No. I think the Lions win. They just don't cover the 2.5.
I'm wearing my Honolulu blue too.
Yeah,
today,
you are. Yeah, you are.
So you're saying that Matt Prater to win it by a point?
Yes, we win by 1.
Bills and Jets. This game is being played in Buffalo, and even lower over-under of 38.5 points for the Jets.
Tickets to this game also available on SeatGeek.
You are not starting anybody. There's nobody injured of note from the Jets. If you're playing anybody from the Jets.
Just Isaiah Crowell's back in practice, but he didn't practice for 2 days. Got a toe injury. I don't feel great about him, but we don't have him ranked like we feel great about him anyway.
For the Bills, are a little bit more interesting, though. A little bit more interesting. Josh Allen kind of on the radar right now, Matthew, as is Zay Jones, his favorite pass catcher.
Yeah, so Zay Jones has at least 5 targets in 6 of the last 7 games, last 4 weeks. Jets allow opponents to complete the 9th highest percentage of deep passes. Like, they'll take, like, one of the things, like, I have to tell you, like, it is unrefined and sometimes it's ugly to watch, but man, Josh Allen is fun to watch, right?
Fun, yeah.
I mean, like, and there's there's a gunslinger mentality to Josh Allen, which is really fun. No Kelvin Benjamin, as the team obviously, moved on from Kelvin Benjamin. So, Zay Jones, I believe, is the number 1 pass catcher on this team. And I'm 34 this week, Field. Like, I'm as a wide receiver 4. So deeper league, DFS, like if you're looking for somebody, there is obvious risk involved with a rookie quarterback, but the matchup and the volume is right for Zay Jones coming off that 2-touchdown game. Josh Allen, I have him inside my top 20. Over the last 2 weeks, he's the best quarterback in fantasy football. Literally, no one has more points than Josh Allen. Last 2 games, he's averaging 15 yards per completion. Also, only Russell Wilson's been better. I mean, so some of those, it's inflated by some of those deep passes. But again, with that gunslinger mentality, like he'll take those shots. He will take those shots. And of course, we talk about the rushing. I think he's got something like 99 yards. Last two games, 22 carries,
right?
234. He had 99 in one game. Last 2 games, 22 carries, 234 yards, and a touchdown. The only players, forget quarterbacks, the only players in the NFL with more rushing yards over the last 2 weeks than Josh Allen, Lamar Miller and Philip Lindsay.
How about that?
I mean, so against a Jets team that the Bills blew out last week, this game in Buffalo, I think there's going to be some flaming tables broken on Sunday in Buffalo.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Buffalo tailgate. I'd like to do a
LFG.
podcast in Buffalo one day.
That would
Bills,
be fun.
3.5-point favorites. I got the Bills.
Yeah. Bill up.
Stefania?
I'm taking the Bills.
Stefania's Daniel's taking the Bills. How about you, Stefania?
Yeah, why not?
All right, one last game, Giants at Redskins. This game is being
Tickets
played
also
in
available
Washington.
on SeatGeek.
That's correct.
Mark Sanchez, Eli Manning.
Start Saquon Barkley, start Odell Beckham Jr. Stefania, a couple of injury notes, though, for Evan Ingram and Sterling Shepard.
Yeah, both on the injury report, but Evan Ingram and Sterling Shepard both moving up to full practices on Thursday. We had Evan Ingram out last week because of a hamstring issue, so this is good news. Sounds like both of them are on track to play.
Yeah, and Odell Beckham Jr.'s got a little bit of a bruise going on right now. I think it's a thigh bruise, but he's okay. He is going to play.
You know what's
on
interesting
Sunday.
about that? I saw that from Jordan Renan, who said it basically came out in his docu-series, but that he's going to play. He's not anywhere on the injury report, and technically if you're receiving treatment or anything, you should be there, so...
Oh, gosh.
I don't really know what
Giants
to think
might have
about
to
that.
answer something on that sometime soon. Matthew, you love the Giants' defense this week. I mean, I can't blame you. It's against the Redskins, who are down to their third-string quarterback.
They're down to their third-string quarterback behind a makeshift offensive line.
Okay.
I mean, listen, games in Washington, and I'm sure Jay Gruden and his staff did the best to try to coach up Mark Sanchez, and they'll keep it short, and they'll try to run a lot with Adrian Peterson, dump offs to Chris Thompson, short stuff to Jamison Crowder and Jordan Reed. They'll try to control it and have a limited package of plays for Mark Sanchez that think sort of fit his skill set and try to minimize risk.
What skill set might that be? Handing the ball off?
I mean, like, what do you want me to say? Anyway, I like the Giants defense this week.
It's a good way of putting it. By the way, a great post from our friend Jonathan Nightingale. Next time we're picking the Bills, don't say Bill up. Say circle the wagons, baby, because nobody circles the wagons like the
Buffalo Bills. Absolutely. Circle the wagons.
All
Shout
right.
out to Boomer.
You really aren't starting anybody with the Redskins or for the Redskins with confidence. It's really just Adrian Peterson and Jordan Reed as like considerations here. That's about it.
I mean, I could see Chris Thompson. Like I said, like he could have had that, with some better blocking, but that's going to be a problem all season long. Although it was Trent, I don't know. I think Chris Thompson is sort of on that, borderline flex consideration. You'd like to see it once before you start them, especially in a playoff game here. But I agree with you. The Redskins offense is not where you're looking for confidence. Remember,
You'd rather not play that.
No, listen, Adrian Peterson wound up with a good game last week, but Adrian Peterson had a 90-yard run and still finished with 98 yards. I'm pretty sure that's like the only time in NFL history that somebody has a 90-yard run and didn't end the game with 100 yards rushing.
I would venture to guess it's one of the few times, if not the only time it's ever happened. Maybe Terrell Pryor when he had that 93-yard run for the Raiders
for a running back.
I
mean, I can't imagine a running back has a 90-yard run in a game and doesn't finish with 100 yards rushing.
I completely agree. The Giants, note, so when Pigskin Pick'em sets its lines each week, they use the initial lines for the games. So in this case, the Redskins were favored by 1/2 point at the beginning of the week. Obviously, the injury took place on Monday night, so it's Mark Sanchez as a starter now. The line has moved to Giants favored by 3.5 points. However, we are still going with the Pigskin Pick'em line because that's how it's set up there. I'm taking the Giants to win this game.
I am as well.
Stefania?
Giants.
Daniel?
I'm taking the Giants, and I really quickly need you guys to weigh in on something. Here behind the glass, we talk about what Bruce Ellington's line is going to be in Week 14 because it's so bad every week.
Okay.
Keith has 6 for 51 and no touchdowns. I've got 8 for 42. Kyle has 4 for 71, including a touchdown, a 26-yarder. Just want to know what you guys think Bruce Ellington's line is going to be this week.
7 for 48.
Yeah, I'm going
for 48.
6 for 55.
7 for 48, 6 for 55. Stefania?
Let's see. The last 3 weeks, he's averaged, I would say, 6.5. So
brainy one is sitting here doing
let's
math.
Give him.
Stefania's about to punch it into
and
an
there's
app.
Arizona, 6 for 42.
Okay, 6 for 42 for Stefania.
Okay.
There you have it. Fantasy football now on Sunday. Network will be probably ESPN2, but check our Twitter handles at Field Yates, at Matthew Berry TMR, where he is on all forms of social media except for the Fantasy Life app. She's Stefania_ESPN on Twitter, Stefania B87 on Instagram. She's got a great injury roundup that comes out on Saturdays. Matthew's got a TV show called The Fantasy Show on ESPN Plus. Bunch of other great stuff.
Streaming now. My love-hate column is up already. You check that out. It's fun. The intro this week is an interview from the great Jeremy Schaap. So, so love there. Jeremy.
I love
Shout
that.
out to Jeremy.
And we're back on Monday to recap every single game.
Peace out.
You're in the 06010. Never gonna hustle in case you didn't know. Matthew Berry, TMR.
You guys go ahead. Give me grief for being on SportsCenter for 45 seconds. I think you could do better than me because I don't think you could.
Jailbait, Field Yates.
You're terrible at hashtag improv. At Field Yates. At Field Yates.
Stefania Bell.
Oh, don't let Barry convert you.
Secret Squirrel, Daniel Dodd.
Make it happen.
Media